Yeah, there we go. All right. All right. Welcome back, everyone. And for anyone who's just tuning in online, sorry for the late start. We had a surprise software update because that's just how Microsoft rolls. You know how it is. Um, all right. I know we've been gone for a couple of weeks. Sorry about that. But fortunately, the way this study is laid out is we get a recap at the start of each lesson anyway. So we'll get everyone up to speed. We are on lesson 8. There are handouts in the back for those who are present here. Um, and this whole study has 15 lessons, so we are officially past the halfway point now. Woohoo! All right, so last week, or not last week, the last time we met, whenever that was, we got through Bildad's second speech. So remember, Job is a cyclical book, so we get three cycles of the three friends speaking. So last week was Bildad and Job's response. Tonight we'll get to Zophar's speech and Job's response. And then next week, the cycle will start again with Eliphaz on top. And then after we get through those three friends, then the fourth friend, whose name I just completely blanked on. I want to say Ehud, but I know it's not Ehud. Um, the fourth friend shows up, and then God shows up after that. So we'll break the cycle a little bit in the coming weeks. So get ready for that. Now I need to look up the fourth friend's name because it's going to bug me if I don't. Elihu, that's it. Elihu's the fourth friend who shows up. All right. So summary review of chapters 18 and 19, and then tonight we'll look at chapters 20 and 21. So Bildad's second speech starting in chapter 18. The three arguers and Job talked past one another. They did not really listen to what the other party had to say. This is again the case when Bildad and Job go at each other. Bildad started off by practically saying, Job, the trouble with you is you're in love with your own wayward notions. You look at us askance as if our intelligence were on par with that of cattle or beasts. Well, let me tell you something. You're a self opinionated ass yourself. You spout a lot of words and manage to say nothing magnificently. Why don't you incline your ear to what we say? If you did, you'd stand a good chance of learning something. Let me try again to get through to you. Here is my pearl of wisdom. As little as you can depopulate the earth or change the order in nature, so little can you alter the moral law of retribution. The wicked are predictably and severely punished. I view your situation in that light. Thereupon Bildad conjured up many illustrations to describe the fate of him that knoweth not God. He's fond of using the word light with verses such as, Yea, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine. The light shall be darkened his tabernacle, and his candle shall be put out with him. He shall be driven from light into darkness and out of the world. Bildad continues on the same wavelength, but with variant sounds. The wicked shall fall like a tottering old man whose sense of balanced judgment has departed. He shall be like one caught in a net, snare, or trap, unable to move. Terror shall affright him and compel him to run. His strength shall be drained, and as of one famished, hunger bitten, he can be easily victimized. That type of disease, which is killer number one, the firstborn death, and the most painful, will grapple him, shatter his confidence, and parade him before the king of terrors, death. All remembrance of him will be wiped out, his house burned to ashes, he himself, roots and branches obliterated, with no son or brother son to perpetuate the family name. When others from the west or east learn of his fate, they are astonished and frightened. That's what happens to him that knoweth not God. Job, please take note. This applies to you. So again, just that same idea. This is how I would run the world if I were God. Therefore, that's how God must be running the world. We're right, you're wrong. And the way that we would function, and therefore the way God must function, is the wicked just automatically get punished. And he's just going off waxing poetic on all the ways that a wicked person is going to be smote by God. And again, they're doing all this to say, hey, Job, you've been smote by God, so clearly you've done something wicked. And then Job protests his innocence. Job counters Bildad's cutting remarks with a few of his own in chapter 19. Job is not reluctant to fight fire with fire. He responds with fiery words of his own, saying, if I've heard it once, I've heard it a dozen times, although it's in Hebrew, so he's heard it 10 times, but it's the same idea. You, Bildad, make me out to be a vile sinner, all the while I've been trying to tell you my colossal affliction is way out of proportion to any fault or sin on my part. Therefore I say, God is wronging me with an overdose of misery. Yet you keep insisting I am getting what I richly deserve. Instead of comfort, you dish out unwarranted reprehensions. Remember this: if I have done wrong, I will be the one to accept the penalty. The responsibility is mine. You won't get hurt. So instead, you yourselves pose as being holier than thou, but is the contrast between what you are and what I am so great that I deserve what I am getting, and that you, in your self esteem, remain unscathed because you are free from defect? In contrast with you, I am being devastated. Know now that God hath overthrown me and hath compassed me with his net, so that I can scarcely move. Open your eyes and take a good look at what God has done to me. The horrendous condition into which God has placed me is construed by you as proof positive of my deep-dyed guilt. See what has happened to me. No one listens to me when I defend my innocence. God has rendered me immobile, fencing me round with a thorn hedge through which I cannot escape. My reputation as a fair-minded person has been shattered. The crown of dignity has been taken from my head. All hope is gone. God treats me as if I were his chief enemy. He sends his troops to keep me pinned down in my tent. And then, too, God has made me a social outcast. Listen to this. My very brothers have turned against me. Folks that used to drop around and visit me now keep their distance. Even close friends of bygone days are conspicuous in their absence, or just being total jerks like the three friends are to him now. My servants no longer respect me as their master, not even when I plead with them to help out in an emergency. My wife shuns me like the plague. She says she can't stand my offensive breath. I try to tell her, now that our children are gone, you're the only one I have left to solace me, but that does not impress her. And even the young children who used to show me deference now poke fun at me. With all I have gone through, the wonder is that I am still alive. But my brush with death was so close, I barely escaped with the skin of my teeth. Oh, my friends, take pity on me, that's all I ask. Kind words shall never die, no, never die. I didn't bring these woes upon myself through gargantuan wrongdoing, despite their assertions. It was the Lord who permitted these things to happen to me. His hand has touched me. Now please don't continue your slander against me. I wish a record could be made of all I said and endured. Then, though I won't be vindicated in my lifetime, I know that posterity will justify me. And hey, that's what happens. Then chapter 19 closes out with Job swinging aloft on the wings of hope and assurance. Previously, he had spoken of a daysman or umpire, later of an advocate, and now, in the closing of 19, he speaks forth of a redeemer, saying, I know that my redeemer lives, and he shall stand at last on the earth, and after my skin is destroyed, this I know, that in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. How my heart yearns within me. Again, one of the recommended texts for use in funerals is that confession of the Redeemer, as well as a confession of the resurrection of the body there. You, my friends, are all geared up to torment me because you insist the root of the trouble is found in me. But be forewarned, you'll have to explain why you persecuted me. The sword of justice is poised over your heads. It may descend upon you at any moment. Then shall you realize that there does exist something called judgment. Thus did Job answer Bildad. So, some clarifications on that section, the author's notes for those chapters. Eastertide would not be complete without the singing of I Know That My Redeemer Lives, nor would an audience tolerate the omission of the aria in Handel's Messiah, I Know That My Redeemer Liveth. I'm not super familiar with the Messiah, but I can understand that sentiment there. Job proclaimed this hope and assurance forthrightly by saying, I know my Redeemer liveth, and he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. Sorry, I get tripped up on the KJV because I don't really read that version very often. Though this text is freighted with some linguistic difficulty, certain unmistakable truths come to the fore. A, there is life after death. B, the Redeemer, Defender, or Vindicator, various terms Job has used throughout, shall appear in person visibly. C, afflictions will be over. D, the resurrection of the body will be a certainty. E, the beatific vision will be one phase of heavenly bliss. Again, Job says, I will see for myself. So the beatific vision, I don't know when this language first is used, but it's really popular in medieval theology. But this is the idea that just the glorious paradise of heaven is that you get to see God. So beatific is blessed, beatitudes, that sort of thing. So it's the blessed vision, the experience of heaven is being in that full presence of God. And you can, like, you read medieval theologians and they're just like, heaven's going to be us just going, oh, this is awesome. So that's the beatific vision confessed there. Then F, self-conscious identity will be preserved in the afterlife. So it's not the it's not the idea of like Hinduism where you just kind of melt back into Brahman and you lose your individuality and become part of the cosmic whole. Job is still confessing, I will be myself. I will see God. My Redeemer will raise me up. So you remain yourself into eternity. Christianity teaches the immortality of the soul, but in addition, it teaches the resurrection of the body. This is the distinctive Christian belief. Again, you look at all pagan religions, even those that have an afterlife, it's always just the soul that goes on to the afterlife. The body gets destroyed. That's why most pagan cultures burn the bodies of the dead, because they're destroying the body to free the soul so it can go off and be in the heavens or the spirit realm or wherever they call it. The resurrection of the body is fairly unique to Christianity. Some interpretations of Judaism have it too, but that gets weird. But we confess the resurrection of the dead, as we say in the Apostles' Creed. I look forward to the resurrection of the dead in the end of the third article, and in the Athanasian Creed, at Christ's coming, all men will rise again with their bodies. So we preach bodily resurrection. Heaven's not the final destination. Bodily resurrection on the new earth is our final destination. With what kind of body shall we come? With a body fashioned like unto Christ's glorious body. So your body will be raised, but it's going to be better, it's going to be improved, it's going to be glorified. So we're not necessarily all going to look the same. We're certainly not going to have all the aches and pains that we have. It's going to be better. In the Great Resurrection chapter, 1 Corinthians 15, which we read last time, Paul says of our body, it is sown in corruption, it is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a supernatural body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. So again, 1 Corinthians 15 is Paul's kind of poetic examination on the resurrection and what we have to look forward to. The great Christian hope is not deliverance from the body, but redemption of the body, as it says in Romans 8:23. And again, this is something that we've kind of lost sight of a lot in American Christianity. This is where that Gnostic idea has kind of crept in, where a lot of people think, no, we're supposed to be freed from our body. We die and we get to go be a spirit floating in the clouds, like in the Tom and Jerry cartoons. So that's always how it happens. Tom's the cat, right? Yeah, there's an explosion. Tom dies, and you see the little ghost Tom floats up to heaven, and then he sits on the clouds, but the body is just left behind. That's not what our goal is. Our divine Lord dignified the human body when he assumed the form and fashion of a man. Philippians 2:8. Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and your spirit, which are God's. 1 Corinthians 6. In the committal service, these words are spoken. Committal service is after the funeral, when you're burying the body and you're blessing the grave. And this is the final, if they've lowered the body in the grave there, this is the kind of the final blessing you do before you throw the dirt onto the casket. May God the Father, who has created this body, may God the Son, who by his blood has redeemed this body together with the soul, and may God the Holy Ghost, who by baptism has sanctified this body to be his living temple, keep these remains unto the day of the resurrection of all flesh. Amen. Alleluia. And again, that's why we show care and dignity for the bodies of the deceased, because we're not doing this, throw my body in the dumpster when I'm dead, I'm not going to need it anymore. We say, no, you're going to be raised into this body, so we're going to do the best we can to take care of it for you until such a day comes. That's why, back when we had the land, cemeteries were all in the church's backyard. So all the believers were buried there, so that when the last day comes, everyone pops up when they're next to all their neighbors from church. And rise up, and there's Walt right there. Like, hi, Walt, good to see you again. That's part of that. And even the word cemetery, if I'm remembering my etymology correctly, it comes from the same root from which we end up with dormitory, kind of a sleeping place. So even the word cemetery confesses the idea that the bodies are just sleeping there until such a time as they are going to rise again. That's always been the church's confession. It's just a lot of people kind of lost sight of that, as people like to just throw church history out the window and go towards American Protestantism instead. All right. Any questions on the 1819 review? Anything we need refreshers on before we jump into 20? All right. The good news is Zophar is going to change things up a little bit. Not as much as we might want. We're still going to be kind of in the same cycle, but he does change his phrasing around, so we get a little bit of a slightly fresh perspective. He's listening to Job a little bit in his response, so that's nice. That gives us an opening prayer, so let's pray, and then we'll jump into our study of chapters 20 and 21. O Lord Jesus, who feels the pain of the world, look down upon all sick and suffering persons. Enfold them with your love, that in the midst of pain they may find your presence. To doctors and nurses, grant tender hearts and healing hands. Give health again out of your tender mercy. Amen. All right, so we're starting at Job 20. Start with verses 1 through 5. Then Zophar the Naamathite answered and said, Therefore my thoughts answer me because of my haste within me. I hear censure that insults me, and out of my understanding a spirit answers me. Do you not know this from old, since man was placed on earth, that the exulting of the wicked is short, and the joy of the godless but for a moment? So, pretty familiar words there, kind of that same idea we've had overall, but have some questions to look at first. So, question 1, whose turn is it now to answer Job? Zophar the Naamathite says that right there. Again, we don't really need that to be a question here. But 2, consult verses 2 and 3, and then give at least 3 descriptive words that fit Zophar based on what he says here. My thoughts answer me because of my haste within me. I hear censure that insults me, and out of my understanding a spirit answers me. Okay. Anxious. Yeah, so he has a haste because of my haste within me. He's quick to answer. He's kind of anxious to get his words out. Any other traits about Zophar we think we can glean from this? Yeah. So he doesn't like that Job is correcting him. So, I think he's pretty. I'm reading him as pretty prideful and arrogant. Like, who are you to say I'm wrong? No, I have to answer that. I have to get the last word in because I know I'm right. There's no way I could be wrong about this. So the fact that Job doesn't just agree with him wholeheartedly, he takes that as an insult because he's just so absolutely sure that he's right. That's how I'm reading it, at least. Um, yeah. Yeah, so it's I have the understanding, I have the answers. If you look in the Lutheran Study Bible Notes, one of the interpretations from that is he's claiming like a divine spiritual inspiration. So sort of like I'm speaking with divine authority here. You need to listen to me because I'm absolutely sure. So yeah, I think he's kind of arrogant, very sure of himself. Maybe even claiming that he's like basically a prophet and speaking for God in this instance. Um, but yeah, he's anxious to get that correction in there because again, he sees that as an insult. How dare you not listen to me? I'm going to get the last word in. So you be quiet now. The grown-ups are talking. um, then 3, what sweeping statement did Zophar make concerning the wicked person in 4 and 5? Do you not know this from of old, since man was placed on earth, that the exulting of the wicked is short, and the joy of the godless but for a moment? Yeah. Yeah. So this is a point they've all been making multiple times is again they're doing this very prosperity gospel-y thing. Good people are rewarded, bad people are punished. You're being punished, therefore you're bad. It's a very simplistic way of looking at everything. And so he's just, in his divine wisdom, he's propagating the same thing. Uh, the exulting of the wicked is short, the joy of the godless but for a moment. So if you give in to wickedness, then God's going to come at you hard and fast. You're not going to get to enjoy the the fleeting pleasures of your wickedness. It's just like you do something bad and then God smites you right away. This part's not new. It's been said before. Job has responded to it multiple times, and just like Chris said, Job's response has always been, we all know guys who are pretty wicked and God's not smiting them right away. Like they're still doing pretty well for themselves here. That doesn't hold up. But nobody's listening to him so far. So then we have in the parentheses, Job will hook him on this point in 21:7 through 15. Yeah, Job is going to respond to that in the next chapter, but we'll get to that there. So this is the start of his statement, but in the rest of his speech, Zophar is going to pivot slightly, and he'll concede to Job a little bit, just not quite as much as he should. So next up is questions 6 through 29. So this is going to be his major excursus, and then we'll go through the discussion questions there. So Zophar expands upon the plight of the wicked. Though his height mount up to the heavens, and his head reach to the clouds, he will perish forever like his own dung. Those who have seen him will say, where is he? He will fly away like a dream and not be found. He will be chased away like a vision of the night. The eye that saw him will see him no more, nor will his place any more behold him. His children will seek the favor of the poor, and his hands will give back his wealth. His bones are full of his youthful vigor, but it will lie down with him in the dust. Though evil is sweet in his mouth, though he hides it under his tongue, though he is loath to let it go and holds it in his mouth, yet his food is turned in his stomach. It is the venom of cobras within him. He swallows down riches and vomits them up again. God casts them out of his belly. He will suck the poison of cobras. The tongue of a viper will kill him. He will not look upon the rivers, the streams flowing with honey and curds. He will give back the fruit of his toil and will not swallow it down. From the profit of his trading he will get no enjoyment. For he has crushed and abandoned the poor. He has seized a house that he did not build. Because he knew no contentment in his belly, he will not let anything in which he delights escape him. There was nothing left after he had eaten. Therefore his prosperity will not endure. In the fullness of his sufficiency he will be in distress. The hand of everyone in misery will come against him. To fill his belly to the full, God will send his burning anger against him, and to rain it upon him into his body. He will flee from an iron weapon. A bronze arrow will strike him through. It is drawn forth and comes out of his body. The glittering point comes out of his gallbladder. Terrors come upon him. Utter darkness is laid up for his treasures. A fire not fanned will devour him. What is left in his tent will be consumed. The heavens will reveal his iniquity, and the earth will rise up against him. The possessions of his house will be carried away, dragged off in the day of God's wrath. This is the wicked man's portion from God, the heritage decreed for him by God. So all of this is to say, he's giving an inch to Job, but he's not going as far as Job. So again, the debate so far is if you're good, God gives you rewards. If you're bad, God punishes you. And one of Job's big counterings has been, we all know guys who are really wicked and yet they're prospering. And so Zophar's speech here is he's basically saying, okay, Job, I'll grant you that sometimes the wicked do seem to get ahead, but it never lasts for very long. So before the position was, you do something bad, God smites you right away. Now Zophar is doing like, well, you can be bad and you get like a good year out of it or something, but then you still die pretty quick because God still brings that smiting down for the justice. So he's persuaded a little bit by Job, but he's still not where Job is. Whereas again, we all know guys who are really bad and they're doing pretty well for themselves in terms of earthly standards. So question 4, looking at this section, give answer with references. I'm not going to make you give references. Do you think, and this is a really oddly phrased question too, I apologize. I didn't write this. So, do you think Zophar advanced proofs by citing statistics and examples to shore up his contention, or did he merely expand and do so grandiosely on his first general statement that the triumphing of the wicked is short and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment? Yeah. So, and yeah, he's not appealing to statistics. He's not saying, well, he's not saying like, well, we know Bob and he was wicked and he died a year later, and Jim was really wicked and he died 6 months later or whatever. He's just going off on the same poetry they've been saying. Oh yeah, of course, this is sure they seem well, and again he does give Job that little bit, like he talks about how the wicked person does have um, certain nice things for a time. So again, that's closer to the truth than they've been before. But then again, he still just says, "Oh, but the wicked will really quickly meet their downfall. Like they get some pleasure out of or some positive life experiences out of their wickedness, but it's always short lived and they all die pretty quickly." Doesn't have any actual proof. He's just saying, well, he's doing the armchair philosopher thing. This is how I think it works, therefore that's how it works. And Job's going to give some really good responses to that in the next chapter, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, so he's trying to answer Job's objections that we all know wicked people who are doing pretty well for themselves, but he doesn't ever want to admit that he's wrong. So he's trying to kind of create a compromise that still falls in his favor, because again he's still pretty prideful and sure that he has all the answers. So he's just trying to say, okay, I'll concede sometimes the wicked do prosper, but it's not going to last long. They're going to meet their end really quickly. So you should just listen to us, Job. We still know what we're talking about. 5. Is his conclusion in 29 similar to or different from his opening pronouncements in verse 5? Why or why not? So verse 5. The exulting of the wicked is short, and the joy of the godless but for a moment. Then 29, this is the wicked man's portion from God, the heritage decreed for him by God. Yeah. So again, same statement. God's going to punish the wicked. Their joy will be cut short. It's only going to last a moment. This is the portion from God. It's decreed. There's divine punishment. He's not going to enjoy the spoils of his wickedness. Which leads us into 6. What name is given to a poetic figure in which the top line and bottom line are pretty much the same, and in between are parallelisms of thought? If anyone can remember that, that would be really cool, but I don't really expect you to. No, it's not a chiasm. Chiasm is the parallelisms within. This is called an envelope or a wraparound, because you have the opening statement on top and bottom, and then those wrap everything else up. Chiasm is when you have it's when you have you make your point in a couplet and then you repeat it in a reversed couplet. So it's like an A B B A, because if you put them up next to each other, it goes A A B B and they cross. And that's chiasm. So that's what that means. Lloyd, do you have your hand up, or are you just stretching? Okay. All right. Yeah, don't let it fall off. That would be bad. All right, now we get to do some mixing and matching, and this was not very well laid out in the PDF, so I apologize, because there are more than just 3 references here. So there are 8 references, and they go on the other page, so we're going to have to flip back and forth a little bit to find the right number. But he wants us to read the text and then match the correct summary statement to those verses. So starting with verses 6 through 9. Though his height mount up to the heavens, and his head reach the clouds, he will perish forever like his own dung. Those who have seen him will say, where is he? He will fly away like a dream and not be found. He will be chased away like a vision of the night. The eye that saw him will see no more, nor will his place any more behold him. So, which letter lines up with that? A, yes. And I'll read that for the sake of people online. A, though for a while the wicked man may walk proudly with his head in the clouds, the time will come when people will wonder what became of him, for he vanished like a dream or a vision. Next one, verse 10. His children will seek the favor of the poor, and his hands will give back his wealth. Yeah. C. His children will be compelled to make restitution to the people their father had swindled. Being thus reduced to poverty, they themselves will have to resort to begging in order to keep soul and body together. So whatever riches you gain from your wickedness, it's not going to last very long. Um, the very people you got that money from, they're going to have to come save your children because you're not going to have any left. All right, next, 12 through 15. Though evil is sweet in his mouth, though he hides it under his tongue, though he is loath to let it go and holds it in his mouth, yet his food is turned in his stomach, it is the venom of cobras within him. He swallows down riches and vomits them up again. God casts them out of his belly. Yes, F. Wickedness titillates his palate, but turns bitter in his stomach. Again, the pleasures of your wickedness are short-lived. It turns pretty quickly, and then it's the experience of Taco Bell. It's really good in the moment, but then you regret it a couple hours later. Next up, verse 17. He will not look upon the rivers, the streams flowing with honey and curds. B, yes. He won't see prosperous days again, lush with honey and butter. Next up, 19 and 20. For he has crushed and abandoned the poor. He has seized a house that he did not build. Because he knew no contentment in his belly, he will not let anything in which he delights escape him. Yeah. G. His conscience will give him no rest because of his shady business practices in acquiring property, like a newly built house whose owner was not able to meet mortgage payments. Next up, 24 and 25. He will flee from an iron weapon. A bronze arrow will strike him through. It is drawn forth and comes out his body. The glittering point comes out of his gallbladder. Terrors come upon him. Yeah, the sins of his youth have caught up with him so that he will die prematurely. All the people he has wronged will take their vengeance upon him and kill him. 27. The heavens will reveal his iniquity, and the earth will rise up against him. Yeah, heaven and earth will turn against him. Pretty straightforward. And finally, 29, which we know by process of elimination is H. This is the wicked man's portion from God, the heritage decreed for him by God. H, you can be sure the doom of the wicked is sealed by God. So again, the wicked always get their comeuppance. A little bit more towards Job's side of thing, but he's still going with this. All punishments come to wicked people. Job, you're being punished. So obviously you did something bad. Maybe it's just you did something bad a couple of years ago and you're not quite remembering it. So try to think back so you can confess it and make yourself right with God, and everything's going to go wonderfully again. All right. Any thoughts on 20 before we move on to 21? Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's how people debate on Facebook still today. So, all right, 21, Job's response, and you got some good ones in here. So I'll start with verses 1 through 16. Then Job answered and said, keep listening to my words, and let this be your comfort. Bear with me, and I will speak, and after I have spoken, walk on. As for me, as my complaint against man, why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be appalled, and lay your hand over your mouth. When I remember, I am dismayed, and shuddering seizes my flesh. Why do the wicked live, reach old age, and grow mighty in power? Their offspring are established in their presence, and their descendants before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, and no rod of God is upon them. Their bull breeds without fail, their cow calves and does not miscarry. They send out their little boys like a flock, and their children dance. They sing to the tambourine and the lyre, and rejoice to the sound of the pipe. They spend their days in prosperity, and in peace they go down to Sheol. They say to God, depart from us, we do not desire the knowledge of your ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him, and what profit do we get if we pray to him? Behold, is not their prosperity in their hand? The counsel of the wicked is far from me. So first opening, what moving requests does Job make of Zophar at the very beginning? And this is kind of oddly worded, so yeah. All right. So Job has complained to his friends for not being very good friends multiple times before, and he's made this point, like, you guys could just like give words of consolation instead of just constantly attacking me, but since all of your words to me are going to be awful, can you just shut up and listen and let me vent for a little bit, because that might make me feel a little bit better, and that's about all you're good for at this point. So when he says, bear with me and I will speak, or sorry, keep listening to my words and let this be your comfort, he's saying, this is, if you guys are going to keep being jerks like this, at least give me the comfort of letting me vent to you. That's about the best way you could actually be friends for me in this moment. So let me talk, let me get this out, and then you can keep on with your usual complaints, because I know you're just going to say the same thing to me over and over again. 9. The friends had originally insisted that God punishes evildoers without fail every time, period. However, Zophar has now modified that stance, conceded that in some instances evildoers do prosper, but then he hastened to add that it won't be for long. The triumphing of the wicked is short, he said in verse 5. Job remonstrated, saying, in fact, you're wrong, Zophar. Sometimes the wicked do prosper a long time, in fact, right down to old age. So how does Job develop his counterpoint verse by verse in 7 through 15, in the majority of that speech we just read? Yeah. 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 So the friends have started out with, oh, if you do bad, God's going to smite you right away. And Job has been like, we all know guys who are doing really bad, who do lots of bad, and they're doing pretty well. So then Zophar's like, okay, so they do well for a little bit, but it doesn't last for long. And God still smites them pretty quickly. And like, their kids are cursed for all of the terrible things that they did. And Job's like, no, we know guys who are like, they do bad things, but their lives are going really well. They've got good crop, they have good flocks, they have good crops, they have nice homes, they live in peace, no one's really coming after them, they have lots of kids, they have grandkids, like it's going on generation. Like from an earthly level of view, I'm not really seeing God's punishment on these guys, but we all know they're not the best guys. So none of your arguments are holding water so far. They die in bed of old age, and it's as you phrase it, uh, in peace they go down to Sheol, so they're not like long-suffering illnesses. It's just like they die in their sleep of old age. That's about the best way you can go, and it's like we know guys where this happens to them, and we know they don't really deserve it. So come on. 10. What was Job's attitude towards the humanistic philosophy that the center of man's life is man himself? Not the best phrased question, but so that's again. So Job is giving his example of the wicked people who are prospering, but he's saying this is the example of this is his example of the wicked. They're the ones who say, "What is the Almighty that we should serve Him? What profit do we see if we pray to Him?" Behold, is not their prosperity in their hand? The counsel of the wicked is far from me. So he says the people who make that claim are the wicked. He doesn't agree with that counsel. So he admits that's not a good philosophy. He admits it's wicked, but he's just saying that unlike the three friends, having that philosophy doesn't mean God is just going to instantly smite you. Like again, they have all of these nice things by earthly standards. They have really good lives, even though they hold this wicked philosophy. They have this wicked thought that they don't need to serve God. They can just focus on themselves. And it's like, yeah, when you're Gordon Gekko in Wall Street, greed, for lack of a better term, is good. If you live for yourself, you can make a pretty good life for yourself by earthly standards, and God's not necessarily going to smite you instantly for it, the way that the friends are saying he is. But Job says in the end, that's still wicked. That's not counsel you want to think, because when you get into the eschatology, when you get to the final judgment, then the three friends are right. Then they do get smoked. But again, it's, Job's being right here, where you need to take a step back and look at things from the more cosmic scale to see how God's justice works. He's going to kind of forget that when he actually gets to talk to God, which God's going to have to remind him about. But he's saying, in this life, by our earthly observations, it doesn't hold true that God automatically smites the wicked. If you can step back and you see the grand scheme of things, yeah, they'll get smote. I don't know how to parse that. When they face their judgment, when it comes time toward that resurrection of the body that he confessed in his last speech, then they're going to get smote. Then they're going to be recognized for their wickedness. So you don't want to hold that philosophy in the long run. But if you're just speaking of an earthly life in the here and now, addressing the situation that he's in, you can do pretty well for yourself with that philosophy. Am I still making sense? So yeah. All right. Any questions on this portion before we read the next half of the chapter? All right. 17 through 34 then. How often is it that the lamp of the wicked is put out, that their calamity comes upon them, that God distributes pain in his anger, that they are like straw before the wind and like chaff that the storm carries away? You say God stores up their iniquity for their children. Let him pay it out to them that they may know it. Let their eyes see their destruction, and let them drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what do they care for their houses after them when the number of their months is cut off? Will any teach God knowledge, seeing that he judges those who are on high? One dies in his full vigor, being wholly at ease and secure, his pails full of milk, and the marrow of his bones moist. Another dies in bitterness of soul, never having tasted of prosperity. They lie down alike in the dust, and the worms cover them. Behold, I know your thoughts and your schemes to wrong me. For you say, where is the house of the prince? Where is the tent in which the wicked lived? Have you not asked those who traveled the roads? And do you not accept their testimony that the evil man is spared in the day of calamity, that he is rescued in the day of wrath? Who declares his way to his face, and who repays him for what he has done? When he is carried to the grave, watch is kept over his tomb. The clods of the valley are sweet to him. All mankind follows after him, and those who go before him are innumerable. How then will you comfort me with empty nothings? There is nothing left of your answers but falsehood. All right, so looking at it breaks down the verses there, but consulting our ESV rendering of these passages, what perplexing questions does Job raise in 17 through 33? So the first 17 and 18, what hard question does he ask for us here? Right. Yeah, you guys keep saying God's going to smite the wicked instantly, so as soon as something bad happens to somebody, you can confidently say, oh, God's punishing you for something that he's done. Again, we all know plenty of wicked people. How many times have you seen the person be wicked and then God just strikes him with a lightning bolt? Doesn't seem to happen as often as you guys are claiming it does. Really, how often is it that the lamp of the wicked are put out, like you say? Because the way you guys are acting is like someone comes up and says a blasphemous thing, and then they just drop dead. I've never actually seen that happen. So broadening this out, this is why do good things happen to bad people when we think bad things should happen to the bad people? God should just strike them down instantly. 19 through 22. And this one, I think it's kind of hard to make it into a question, but you say God stores up their iniquity for their children. Let him pay it out to them, and that they may know it. Let their own eyes see their destruction, and let them drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what do they care of their houses after them when the numbers of their mouths is cut off? Will any teach God's judgment knowledge, seeing that he judges those who are on high? Yeah, so they're in part of their condemnation of the wickedness of saying, God's going to punish them and their future generations. Their children are going to suffer for what they've done. And Job is just making these points like, if you're going to, again, like oversimplify God's justice to this idea, good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. Why would the children be punished for what the bad people did? Because they're not the ones who did it, first of all. Secondly, when you think about the wicked, usually, broadly speaking, one of the identifying markers of a wicked person is a self-centeredness. They care about themselves. If God wants to punish them, he'll punish them, but punishing their children isn't really going to affect them very much because they're not really going to care. They're going to be dead at that point. So, and they're dead now, so you don't really get much more punished than that. So punishing their children isn't going to be an exercise of justice either. So even in their attempts to like put God in this box of how they think justice should work, they're not even really getting the idea of justice correct in how they're attributing God's actions here. So I don't know how you phrase that into a question, but that's the sentiment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like the do anyone read the book The Whipping Boy? They made me read it in like third or fourth grade, so I don't remember it super well because it's a long time ago when I read it. But it's basically there's a prince whereby royal decree they're not allowed to do anything to harm him because he's the prince, and so they have a whipping boy who's literally just this kid that they like. Whenever the prince misbehaves, they grab the whipping boy and they whip him, and the prince has to watch. And like the first half of the book, like the prince is just this selfish brat, and he like purposely misbehaves so that he can see the whipping boy get punished because it's not a punishment to him. He takes sadistic pleasure in seeing the whipping boy punished, and it's the same thing. Like if God's going to punish the wicked, like you say he will, he'll punish the wicked. Punishing their children just kind of lets them off the hook there. So yeah, it doesn't work if that's going to be how justice works according to you. Yeah. Yeah. And there's also that too. That's if God is punishing me for something I've done, like you said, why are my kids dead? They got punished too, but you're saying it's because of something I did. Now, granted, earlier one of the friends, it might have been Zophar earlier, I forget which one. One of the friends earlier did say, "Yeah, your kids deserve to die," which that would get them punched in the face if I were in Job's place. But other than that time when they said, "Yeah, your kids deserve to die," like the sentiment has been, "Oh, your kids are dead to punish you." But again, it's my kids were my own people. So now they're saying they got punished for something I did, which again doesn't fit in with your very simplified justice box that you're trying to put God into. Yeah. So. All right. Then 23 through 28. One dies in his full vigor, being wholly at ease and secure, his pails full of milk, and the marrow of his bones moist. Another dies in bitterness of soil, never having tasted of prosperity. They lie down alike in the dust, and the worms cover them. Behold, I know your thoughts and your schemes to wrong me. For you say, where is the house of the prince? What point is Job making here? Hmm. Sort of. Um, yeah. Yeah. So he's not so much equivocating a moral value to the wealth, but he's doing the Ecclesiastes thing. He's pointing out no matter who you are, whatever your life situations are, rich, poor, righteous, wicked, everyone dies in the end. Death ends up being a great equalizer. Um, and the fact that everyone meets this same end, again, if we're looking at everything from an earthly level perspective, if the world works the way they seem to think the world works, if God works the way they seem to think God works, then it should hold true that, like, yeah, the wicked die right away and the righteous just like live forever and they never die. But like, we know good people that are dead, we know bad people that are dead. It seems everyone dies either way. So again, there has to be more complexity and nuance than what you're expressing here. And if you do want to do an equivocation of between the wealth and their morality, which you kind of can in the poetic structure too, it's like, yeah, the wicked person, as we've been saying, has been prospering in this life. So yeah, he dies just as much as the righteous person, but he does die better. Like, he dies fat and happy and full of food, and the righteous person just starves to death. But they're both dead. So as far as we can tell from our earthly level view, in the big scheme of things, there is no real advantage to righteous or wicked. There's no, if you're ignoring that final judgment and what happens after death, uh, you can't just apply their very simplistic view in the way the world works. Because again, if it really worked the way that they thought it worked, then the righteous just kind of live forever because they never get punished with death. Because from this level of perspective, death is the ultimate and final punishment. Am I still making sense? I feel like I'm talking in circles, but good. Okay. All right, and finally, 29 through 33. This one's not so difficult a question, but have you not asked those who travel the roads, and do you not accept their testimony that the evil man is spared in the day of calamity, that he is rescued in the day of wrath? Who declares his way to his face, and who repays him for what he has done? When he is carried to his grave, watch is kept over his tomb. The clouds of the valley are sweet to him, all mankind follows after him, and those who go before him are innumerable. Yeah. Have you talked to anyone else besides this little bubble of you three? Because these three are all in agreement that this is the way the world works. And Job's like, if you talk to literally anyone else, they will tell you that's not how the world works. There's all these wicked people. They escape the punishment for what they've done. Like, who actually goes up to the wicked person and is like, you're a wicked person and you deserve to die? No, the wicked person has all these ill-gotten gains. He gets to surround himself with yes men, and he gets to escape his punishments. So this will be the part that gets us kicked off of YouTube. But Hunter Biden confessed to lying on his background check, saying he wasn't using drugs when he was addicted to crack, bought a gun, and then had his girlfriend throw it out in a trash can across the street from a high school. They finally actually convicted him for that, but then he got to plead it down to like a misdemeanor. I forgot to pay my taxes. Like, anyone else, they'd be going to prison for, like, I think the minimum is 5 to 7 years for all of that. But because he has his connections and the rich and powerfulness and some of the misdeeds there that they want to keep covered up, he gets to plea bargain his way out of the whole ordeal, and he gets a slap on the wrist out of all of it. Yeah. Yeah, when he is carried to the grave, watch is kept over the tomb. So they either Stalin or Lenin still has like his giant mausoleum tourist location. They finally have to start paying money, charging money for it because they couldn't afford the upkeep through communism. But like, killed 10 million of his own people, and people still go to honor him and be like, "What a great man! We should all try to bring back the USSR." Man, YouTube hates me. All right, question 12. What degree of comfort did Job say he derived from Zophar's exposition? None at all, yeah. How will you comfort me with empty nothings? There is nothing left of your answers but falsehood. So again, you guys are kind of worthless through all of this. You're not telling me anything I knew. You're repeating the same thing over and over again. I've like taken apart everything you said, but you still keep insisting upon it. This again gets us back to our verse 2. If you're going to be any comfort, you can just shut up and listen and let me vent, because when you guys talk, it just makes things worse. You guys are useless friends. All right, and then 13, personal sharing time. So I know we're all hard-headed Germans, so if no one wants to talk, I understand. But think of a time when you needed comfort. What words of a friend or relative helped you the most? I think we asked this one in one of the earlier lessons already. Yeah, well, knowing your family, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah. Yeah. Ministry of presence. Yeah. And again, that's the verse 2. Listen to my words. That can be your comfort. Don't talk. Just let me talk when I'm ready and when I need to. Again, Kierkegaard's quote: Job endured everything with patience, and then his friend spoke, and then he grew impatient. All right, well, we flew through that. That was lesson 8. So we're getting out of here early tonight, unless someone wants to get me off on a tangent and let me ramble for half an hour. Otherwise, I'll pray us out, and we'll start lesson 9 next week. So, like I said, we're past the halfway point. There's 15 lessons, so assuming no more interruptions, we'll be out in 7 weeks. So we'll be done with this by start of Augustish, and then we'll figure out if we want to keep this study doing the midweek study, if we want to just kind of let it go. So yeah, think about if we like this model, if we want to keep doing it, and then think about what other books or topics you may want to study. You have another 7 weeks before we get to that point, but the longer I have to prep, the better I can try to manage my time. I still won't manage my time very well, but I at least won't have an excuse for mismanaging my time then. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll go from there. So otherwise, I will, unless anyone wants me to go on a tangenty rant about something. I see no hands, so I will pray us out, and then we can go about our evenings. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, once more we thank you for your servant Job, for the patience that he endured all things with, and the examples and wisdom that he has given to us. And we ask that you would help us to apply his wisdom to our lives when we encounter the hardships and suffering of this life. We would remember that all things are according to your plan, and though we may not understand it, we are to put our trust in you, knowing that you do work all things for good for those who love you. So help us to keep that in our minds always. Keep us in your hands and sanctify us with your grace as we seek to live out lives pleasing to you until we can once more gather here in your name, in which we pray.